Hey, good afternoon. Welcome to our live webinar. This is Opendock and RedwoodConnect, and we're going to be discussing cutting warehouse costs through integrated dock scheduling. We'd like to thank everybody for joining, and we're going to go ahead and jump to our next slide and kind of talk through how today will go. So right off the bat, we're going to be introducing ourselves. We have three people that are going to be speaking and kind of talking through what we're doing, myself included, and then we're going to tap into a little bit about dock scheduling. And then also the integration platform. So what does it look like when you take dock scheduling and plug it into your ecosystem? And Zach's going to do a great job of showing how Redwood's built this really cool Connect platform where you can plug and play API and integration into making a really cohesive ecosystem. And then we'll talk about what the dock scheduling looks like after it's been integrated. And then we've got plenty of time at the end for Q&A. So please fire away with that. My name is Nate Allen. I'm the Senior Director of Digital Sales here at LoadSmart, specifically with our Opendock product, which is a digital dock scheduling solution. Been selling for over 20 years, but still really consider myself kind of a toddler when you think about supply chain and logistics, because I've only really been focused on that for the last 3 or 4 years. And we have some people that have some really great experience that I enjoy learning from.
And I'm Frankie Alimo, 15 years with Redwood Logistics. Started off about the first decade running a trucking operation. Over the past 4 or 5 years, have slid into the warehouse environment. And I'd say over the last 2 years, I am an unofficial Opendock hype man, so to speak. So it's a pleasure to be here with you, Nate.
And I'm Zach Hand. I am the Solutions Director for RedwoodConnect, handling all of our Oracle-related integration needs through Redwood for all of our client integrations.
Great. So we've got a lot of experience here today, and we're excited to jump in. And we welcome your questions, and we'll do our best to answer them. And we think we've built something pretty cool together, but we are not standing still. We have plenty more to build, so we welcome your feedback and input. The big question is why dock scheduling software for warehouses, right? We think that a lot of times that there are different ways to handle things. And we know that some people like to jump in with emails, and some like to jump in with phone calls. And there's even some first come, first serve out there. And really what we think about is if a warehouse can take and publish their schedule to their carrier base, and the carrier can mean broker, dispatcher, driver, vendor, customer, right? That's a pretty agnostic term. But if they turn and publish that schedule that they're comfortable with and allow people to start booking at the time that they want, we start to have data, right? A phone call is not a data point. An email is not a data point. But once we first publish that schedule and say, great, you jump in at the time that works for you, now we can measure everything from that point forward and have quick and easy answers versus feelings. And Frankie, you said at the intro that you've been in carrier sales before running warehouse sales. Like, talk a little bit about the evolution of like some of the challenges you saw when you didn't have a dock scheduling solution.
No, absolutely. Especially on the trucking side. You know, when you're running an owner-operator based model where every minute is to the bottom line for these drivers, you know, efficiency comes into play. And we all know supply chain is about as transactional as it gets on a daily basis, right? You got weather, traffic, hours of service, shippers, receivers, brokers, you know, carriers. So many things can kind of go wrong. You can put the perfect plans together, have the best pre-plans for your drivers, but if something you experience some hiccups at a shipper or receiver, everything can kind of sort of unfold. And one of the benefits of utilizing the Opendock system when I was running the trucking company was that I knew every time I was going into a shipper or a receiver that utilized Opendock, I could pretty much guarantee my driver was going to be out of there a certain amount of times, where you can really become more efficient. You can plan better, and that can kind of continue to make some strong benefit for sure.
Yeah, so that's one of the exciting things we like to jump into is that there's been some friction at times in the past between drivers that show up at facilities and the people that work at those facilities. And rather than think about this is another thing that we're going to ask people to do, what we're actually hoping is the shipper is saying to that driver, we value your time. If you book this time at 10 o'clock, we're trying to get you on the road by 11:30 so that you can do what? Go take more loads, pick up more loads, deliver more loads, right? Or maybe it's even a quality of life thing.
It absolutely is. And as you talk the transactional piece, knowing that your driver's going to be taken care of. Because what happens is you show up to a facility that, like you had mentioned, first come, first serve, or no appointment, or you think you have an appointment, the shipper's letting the broker know, the broker lets the carrier know. These drivers get held up. And then it turns into the driver calling his fleet manager. He's upset he's not getting unloaded. The fleet manager's reaching out to the load finders, the planners saying, what in the world is going on? The planners are reaching out to the broker, and you have a chain of events that literally stops what everybody's doing, makes them take about 10 steps backwards, and you're waiting for answers. Drivers get mad, and we have legitimately lost drivers because of, hey, it makes us look like we don't know what we're doing when we're sending them into facilities where they're sitting, right? And as running a trucking company, losing drivers could be, it's devastating. It's devastating.
So you lose drivers. The other potential outcome, right, is that the next time that person comes back, that rate's probably not as favorable as it used to be to the shipper.
Without a doubt. And your drivers will be like, oh, no, I'm not going there, or I'm not picking up there. I know what happens there. And you can't blame them, right? So utilizing an Opendock platform has just been a tremendous advantage, especially on the carrier side, without a doubt.
Yeah. So there's some rumors in some places on the web where there's some communication between drivers. If you're going to go to that facility, you should probably charge 3 or 4 times, because they're going to make you jump over some railroad tracks and turn left at a blind spot. Right.
And the drivers do a great job of putting those pictures. You go to Google and type in a shipper receiver, and don't think we haven't done it before. If we're going to somewhere we haven't, we're like, let's take a quick peek. Like, oof, okay, yeah, let's stay out of those places. So absolutely.
Yeah. So another benefit we like to think about too is, so Frankie was talking about the emotions of the driver getting frustrated. Well, we don't want them back on the road pulling that big 53-foot long trailer and having emotions, but also the longer we keep them sitting idle, just not doing anything for them, and then they still need to get back on the road, we've also elevated the safety concerns, right? The probability of accidents go up higher the longer we make drivers wait and sit idle.
Without a doubt.
So we talked about it from the carrier side. What's cool about having Frank here is that he's sat on both sides. And so we also think about, how do I allocate my resources internally, right? Nobody likes to have to wait until the clock hits 5 o'clock to go home. Nobody likes standing around at their door with a broom, sweeping and cleaning the area for the 100th time that day. But also, you don't want to have somebody showing up on Monday with plans to be gone by 3. And you've got so many trucks there that there's no way you can cut them loose at 3. And now you're talking about overhead. So I'm curious about, managing your internal employees.
Without a doubt. And when you're running warehouses, your customers want full transparency of inventory, right? They want to know what's coming and what's coming out. They want everything to be clean. So you can be as clean as possible, have a great WMS, have a great operation going. But that variable, how many times you walk a warehouse and be like, where's that truck at? Where's that truck at? When's he coming? He's supposed to have a 1 o'clock appointment. Nobody knows where they're at. So when you have the ability for carriers to kind of go into a system, set their appointments, warehouse knows exactly when they're going to be. Now you're reducing overtime. You can be more efficient. And the beautiful thing about Opendock in terms of that is, you'll see it later, is being able to utilize these 5 docks are LTL. These 5 docks are going to be our full truckloads. You can stage freight. You know who's coming in, when they're coming in. And it makes everything a ton more efficient, for sure.
Yeah, that's exciting. So I'm curious, a lot of times an objection we might hear would be the carriers won't adopt that. They just want to show up and use their paper like they've always been using it. What would you say to somebody that would object in that way?
And I said those same words about 14 years ago. And when you are the carrier, you always feel like you're getting shafted, right? It's like, oh, these brokers and the shipper want me to use Opendock. They want me to do their work. But what you realize pretty quick is what a great advantage it is to you, right? I could literally, based off of my driver's hours, based off of when we can get there. And then when you use Opendock, you usually have a little bit of a window, like you need to get it in there within 2 or 3 or 4 days, but you can plan accordingly, right? I know this driver's not the fastest driver. He likes to do 400 or 500 miles a day. So I'm not going to set him that Wednesday appointment. I'm going to give him a Wednesday afternoon, and I know he's going to get empty when he gets there. Yeah.
Okay. So more predictability. And then on the warehouse side, what about the ability to track detention and stuff like that in terms of what you were facing before having a dock scheduling tool such as Opendock and since then?
Absolutely. And I don't want to steal Zach's thunder, but for sure you can, what's nice in there, is that I pulled up a report this morning on dwell time, basing it off of docks, basing it off of how long is it going to take to unload a certain truck. All that information is in there. You can run reports over the last 2 months to see how efficient each location was, when the trucks are coming in. And another great tool is what carriers are really causing you headaches, right? You got all that data right inside of there just by looking at appointments and tracking it, for sure.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So one of the ways we think we go to market is it's going to help you internally, right? So it's going to help you allocate your resources. as you can see on the slide, that we believe 30,000 emails turns into about 100,000 minutes spent. And then if you start to multiply that out and then you wait for them to reply back, or the phone call and the message and the hierarchy, all these things start to contribute to chaos. So we believe we're freeing up the internal resources. But as Frankie was sharing, when you look at the insights and start to measure dwell time, you can even start to figure out that, hey, we're great at FTL, we're great at containers, we're not so great at LTL, and we're not so great at backhaul. How do we improve our internal measurements so that we can then be a better partner in that shipper of choice status that we want? But then, as Frankie also suggested, now we can start scorecarding our carriers, which is a really big deal, and be able to say, actually, we don't think those rates are fair based upon the fact that you're always 15 minutes late, or we show you only showing up on time about 60 to 70% of the time. And all that does is jam me up for the next driver that wants to have that advantageous benefit.
Without
right?
a doubt, we have customers that will basically tell carriers, give carriers, tender them the freight and say, schedule your appointments. And then we're getting pushback from the customer saying, what's going on? Why isn't this delivered? Why are we late? Why don't we have the product? And all I got to do is just kind of pull up the reporting and be like, look, so-and-so carrier has canceled 14 times in the last, and it even goes so far as to show you like what their average, time of cancellation is before the appointment. You can see people that are canceling 30 minutes before or 3 days before. You obviously prefer the 3 days before, but yeah, all that stuff is tied into them for sure.
Yeah. Well, we definitely get excited about jumping into the platform. And if you look at our next slide, you'll see that these are just kind of some of the images that you'll see. And so this is a view from the warehouse point, and you'll notice that there's color coding to be able to track things that are scheduled versus things that are actually at the dock versus things that are done. And you'll even see red, which is a negative sign, right, for no show. But I'm just curious. It's hard for me as somebody who's in sales to say, this is a really simple and easy to use tool. It's not simple in what it does, but it's very easy to use. I'm curious to get your feedback after having used it before. Was there anybody that was technologically adverse to it, or they were just jumping in and going, piece of cake?
Yeah, I was technologically adverse to it, but what you realize pretty quickly is how simple it is. And let's talk shipper, warehouse, receiver. It's got such a cool little tool in there that say we made the decision. We hadn't used Opendock before. We know who the carriers that we're using are, but we're going to make the switch to Opendock. And your back of your mind's like, this is going to be such a transition. You can literally type in a company name into Opendock, and it will show you there's 56,000 carriers or brokers signed up through there. It can basically list out like, oh wow, look at 80% of the carriers we already use already have accounts with Opendock. Super simple to use. And Zach will show. You can literally build out what you want, what information you want to see from carriers when they're making their appointments. We talk transactional, nonstop, crazy data all the time. We get loads tendered with 17 PO numbers and 14 PO, pallet count. There's some where at the warehouse that we're currently running, we want one number. And so we tell every single carrier, when you go in to set your appointment, there is only one field. It is for one number only. So that way, boom, all the warehouse guys have it. It's even got a TV grid in there that if you had monitors in the warehouse, all of your employees that are with your dock unloaders, your loaders, your fork, they know who's coming in when they're coming in at all times. Very cool. Very cool.
I talked to somebody this week actually that said they still every morning go out and write on a whiteboard for the dock employees to be able to see what's happening. And now what you're talking about is, what if we put it on one of those 80-inch TVs, and instead of having to look down or grab their phone or do things that are distracting from what they're supposed to be doing, it's just publishing in a real true rolling time, right? What's happening.
You want to build up your employees. I mean, how many places do you go into where it's just, you have a top dog and then everybody's just taking orders? The warehouse workers love knowing that they know what's going on at all times without having to ask questions. All the information is there from, and then their job performance goes up. And we know what happens when your job performance goes up, right? And efficiency. So
yeah. And as a consumer, right, I get happy because if I'm ordering something and I expect a 48-hour window of something to show up at my door because I really need it, because I wait till the last minute, I'm benefiting because you have happier employees, right?
Without a doubt.
Yeah, so this is really exciting, and both of us don't want to steal Zach's thunder too much because he's definitely more the expert on how things work together. From an Opendock selling standpoint, one of the things that I hear sometimes is, hey, this is great. This is what we need. How does this live in an ecosystem that we've already built? For instance, we have this ERP and we have this WMS and we have this TMS, and we want Opendock to talk to that. And Opendock works great as a standalone solution, but we know with more sophisticated warehouses, they've already invested in other technology and want Opendock to play nice with that. And so we've built a really great, robust API where every move that's made in Opendock is also an API and can be pushed or pulled in the direction of those other systems. And before I embarrass myself anymore with my lack of technical expertise, we're going to call in Zach, the real expert, to talk about that. Go ahead, Zach.
No problem. If we want to go on to that next slide, we'll kind of get into how RedwoodConnect operates and what we like to tell our customers here. So essentially, RedwoodConnect is our proprietary middleware system that is part of our LPaaS offering. So when we speak of LPaaS, we mean Logistics Platform as a Service. And for us, that encompasses a few different systems, but where I focus is strictly on that RedwoodConnect interface and how we can enable customers and clients to send their data into us through RedwoodConnect from any type of source system to any type of destination system. So when we talk about RedwoodConnect and the biggest selling point that we have, it is literally that we can connect anything to anything and take any sort of data element or data format and pass that into your destination system, do any enrichment or enhancement to that payload, or any data normalization or anything like that. Secondarily, really what we love to see is that streamlining partners with common data flows. One of the things that we've been working on over the past couple of months and made a huge inroad in is reusability. And one of the focuses when we started the Opendock integration process was that reusability, so that any clients can really say, hey, I've got an Opendock instance, and I've got a WMS or a TMS that we want to be able to send that information to so that I can have that real-time data visibility. And so inevitably what we've done is create a situation where we can take that Opendock instance, plug in our processes, which we'll go through here after a couple of slides as in our demo, and really just change a couple of data elements, and we're already up and running. So the time to implement and the time to use is much, much shorter than somebody creating a custom one-off solution for us. So if we want to move on to that next slide. So RedwoodConnect and TMS integrations, or WMS or ERP integrations, as we talked through before, we're looking to connect any third-party system to, let's say, Oracle OTM or GTM or OWMS. In the instance of our Opendock integrations, we've connected to OWMS, which is Oracle Warehouse Management System. And what that allows users to do both in Opendock and in OWMS is to integrate seamlessly in a single system. So we're talking about that carrier, like Frankie alluded to earlier, only really needing to go into Opendock, create their appointment. And now, once that appointment's been created, we automatically pull that information out of the Opendock backend. We import that into the OWMS to where that appointment is then visible for whatever warehouse user or supervisor who needs to see that information. Once that carrier comes to check in, there's no interaction needed from that WMS or warehouse personnel. They simply click our check-in button, and we'll go through that here in a second. And then we're taking that data back out and passing it back in. And so I kind of gave you a sneak behind the curtain here, but in general, as the slide shows, we want to integrate anything to anything. We have the capability to do that. We love the plug and play. You'll see within our design canvas that it is a drag and drop system. Most cards are usable with a couple of clicks and parameters, and it's very user friendly and intuitive for us to use there. So hopefully you guys will get an idea of that as we move through the demo here. If we want to move on to the next slide. And so on those WMS integrations, what we really want to do is, one, mitigate risk. What that does in meaning is essentially taking out unknown appointments or carriers showing up without notification. I've worked in a warehouse before. It is frustrating to warehouse users, dock personnel, dock supervisors, when a carrier shows up and nobody knows what that was. It causes chaos on the floor. The drivers get frustrated, as Frankie alluded to earlier as well, and it's just bad all the way around. What that allows us to do is control costs. Nate, I know you mentioned dwell time earlier. What we really want to be able to do from a warehouse personnel perspective and a driver perspective, or even a broker, is to make sure that that driver's not sitting there an extended period of time. As far as being completely customized, while there is some reusability, yes, we do leave that customization in to where some of those data elements that you need to see different from a previous client can be added. Through our integration mapping, which is the process that myself and my team really take over, we can do that enhancement and enrichment from there and get that customization in there while still leaving about 85% of that process reusable. And so from our perspective, it's decreased our time to implement, as we mentioned earlier. And then lastly, we're connecting with the cloud. Obviously, on-prem system still exists. However, we're seeing that go away with rapidity. OWMS instances are all based in the cloud. Our RedwoodConnect tenants are all based in the cloud. And then the Opendock UI is based in the cloud. What that allows for is essentially very quick data transfer, data simplicity in going through those integrations, and so on and so forth. So if we want to move on. All right, so we'll go through our demo here. And so really what I want to be able to show you guys is essentially the ease with which we can create appointment within the Opendock system. We'll watch how that flows through RedwoodConnect in each of those steps. And then we'll go into OWMS and then we'll action each of those steps as well. All right. So first off, the Opendock UI, very intuitive for us. Me being a carrier user here, what we want to do, we'll click on a time. And then as Frank mentioned, there's only a bit of information that we really want to get into this appointment so that we streamline everything going into OWMS for usability. So we'll create our carrier contact in there. We'll click our drop-down menu. Quick selection there. We already have our warehouse pre-populated. And then we'll select our load type. And so with Opendock, these load types are configurable within the Opendock UI. We'll click on our LTL, and that's essentially our appointment type. So we've got our basic information already filled out here. We'll click our next. We've already selected our appointment time there for 2 p.m. Simple enough. And then we'll go into that single reference that Frankie mentioned as well. So we'll plug that into our reference number. We'll hit create here in just a second. If you want to add yourself here, you can. Very super user friendly to make sure that we have everybody notified as it pertains to those appointments. So we'll hit create. Now our appointment has shown up. So this is perfect. We'll hop into RedwoodConnect now. And so what I'm going to do, as you can see from a design perspective, we've taken a couple different design choices here, and we'll get into that after the demo. But what I want to essentially do is go ahead and push this through manually so that we can be brief. Hop in, we'll look at our inbound payload, and then we'll go ahead and process as a new job, which kicks off our process here. So now we can see that the system is already in flight. We're calling out to Opendock. We're getting all of that information, and then inevitably what we'll do is see that information in OWMS Cloud as an appointment. So as we hop in here, give me 1 second. Did not expect that to happen. Apologies, guys. Anytime you do a live event, nothing ever goes as planned now, does it? All right, so there we go. Okay. And now we're in. So as we can see, we have all of our inbound loads here. I've created an appointment for this demo 6/15/2302. So now what we can do is hop into our appointment tab. We'll go ahead and hit refresh. And now we're able to see that appointment already in OWMS. So again, from creating that appointment to the entire translation through Connect and into OWMS minus my minor technical difficulties, we were in there really quickly. And so now from a WMS user, what we can look at is honestly, it's as simple as this, guys. We highlight our line of the appointment. Our driver comes into the check-in window. We check him in. We hit our dock and we'll hit submit. And so now behind the scenes, what this is doing is kicking off an extract back out to RedwoodConnect into a second process that we'll be able to see come in. Which will then, we'll just view yesterday's appointment. Actually, that was on today's, my apologies. And so what we can see happen through time is we'll have our arrived message in, we'll have our completed message as well. And so now if I pop into here, we have our checked in message from OWMS. It's now changed status in the Opendock UI to arrived. Obviously, it tells us that our carrier is early. And then if we come down here, we also have an updated status there. So what we can do is hop back into the OWMS. We'll highlight that line again. And as we can see, our workflow is already figured out for us. We can hit our checkout button. And again, that same process is going to work out in our favor. And then we'll have this flowing through one more time into the Opendock UI. And then we'll be able to see that just like this previous one that we worked on yesterday. We'll go to green and then we'll have our appointment fully checked in, checked. And now that carrier or that broker or dispatcher can then see that information in real time. So pretty fantastic little integration here for real-time data visibility and simplicity. So any questions, you guys feel free to ask, but I believe that is my time.
Thanks, Zach. Definitely helpful. And I know anytime I'm demoing just Opendock by itself and I talk through it, it takes a little bit longer, but just even in that time there, you can see how quickly it goes even while you were talking. And if you remove the explaining part of it, it's pretty lightning fast. One of the cool things we heard about recently was somebody that had their WMS integrated to Opendock. As they scanned that last pallet, it was essentially checking out the load in Opendock at the same time. And I think one of the things that becomes a little bit fun when you're running a warehouse, right, is that burden of proof. Somebody says, hey, I was there at this time. And you say, no, you checked into this time. They said, hey, I left at this time. And you say, no, you left at this time. So having that evidence, Frankie, how does that help you guys out?
That's great. And I'm so glad you brought that up because there is Opendock allows you can click into any appointment, and I was going to kind of show it today, but we didn't have on. And it's got an audit of every single person that has touched that, what the carrier's name that set the appointment, if it was ever canceled, if it was ever changed, when the freight was scanned in, boom, it's going to show in there, this was taken at this time. It literally gives you an activity audit of that appointment time with every single detail in there.
Yeah. And as we build out integration, what that means is less touch points and more accurate touch points, right? In 2023, we think of data as a first-class citizen, and it's a must-have or table stakes, if you will. And being able to say that this person showed up at this time, they left at this time. Now you're not sorting through boxes of paper, right?
Right, because for how many years have we done? Well, make sure your driver puts time in and time out on his bills, right? And so, listen, I love my drivers, but they're going to fudge the numbers a little bit if it's going to give them a little bit more in detention time, right? That's what they're going to do. I didn't get there at 10:40. I got there at 10. It's right here. We have all of that data and information. And I think, not to hop around, but I think an important point to make is that it's free for carriers to sign up for. And I think people need to understand that they're not paying, as you put Opendock into your warehouse, your shipper, your receiver, and you're making carriers utilize this, it's free. They just go in, they set up an email and a username and a password, and they're in and they can start setting appointments. So I think that's a very important piece for sure.
Yeah, it's a good call out. So we sort of believe that we don't want friction for drivers, right? We don't want them to have to download an app. We don't want them to have to get kind of crazy with all the information they fill out. There's a first name, last name, a couple more pieces of information, and a username and password, and then they're in. And the nice thing is if they're using it at a facility in Philadelphia and they drive a little bit down the road to another facility, it's not a separate login. They're just booking with that separate facility. So because we have 120,000 carriers registered in the platform, oftentimes when people go to adopt Opendock, their carriers are already used to using it somewhere else. Now they just get to use it at their facility.
Yeah. And with that being said, the last point I wanted to make was the relationship piece, right? We talk numbers and data and, analysis and statistics. The amount of relationships that I made with receivers and shippers just utilizing Opendock, meaning that I would set an appointment. They have my personal email. Once that appointment's set, they get something sent to them. If there's an issue, if my guy's not showing up on time, they can reach out to me. What happens is you build that relationship up a little bit, and down the road, if you ever need a favor, you've talked back and forth with that shipper receiver. For me, I'm a people person. I can't tell you how many favors I've gotten done for me for my drivers that might be running a little late, and then vice versa, where a receiver will call and say, "Hey, Frankie, listen, I know you got this appointment scheduled for your driver. I'm in a little bit of a bind. Is there any way you can bring him in earlier? Is there any way you can bring him in later?" Listen, it's not a measurable thing, but I think it's truly, truly important. Everything's transactional. It's nice for relationships to kind of be a part of this. So I think it's definitely something we should know.
Yeah, we hear a lot. I was actually just yesterday at a supplier summit, and they're calling it SROC, and it's shipper/receiver of choice, right? And that might start with, "Hey, we'll let you use our bathrooms," which used to be something that didn't always happen. And then it might be, "We actually have a dog run," because a lot of people travel with their pets, right? And then it might be, "We have hot coffee." And when you start to open up the schedule and say, "We respect and value your time," it's amazing how far that goes.
And at the parking on site, right? When you talk hours of service, drivers would arrive the night before, not having to go to a truck stop where the receivers say, "Hey, let them know we can park on site." There's just opening that channel of communication, which goes a long way. Like I said, everybody's got their head down. There are 4,000 emails and 900 phone calls. It's nice to be able to get with people and kind of get things, taken care of that way, for sure.
Yeah. So you guys at Redwood have obviously built something cool that Zach showed in terms of this, RedwoodConnect, this logistics provider as a service. When you first started using Opendock, what was the onboarding experience like? Because it's somebody who's probably experienced WMSs and TMSs, and sometimes that implementation is fairly exhaustive, right? What was it like when you signed up with Opendock in terms of when you could actually go live?
Okay, so perfect. So I just mentioned the carrier parts. We won't talk about it. We're talking about when you're doing it, you're a shipper, you're a receiver, and you decide you want to do that. I had my warehouse built out, the entire thing in Opendock in a 1-hour phone call with Patricia, right? Sat with Patricia. I basically said, "These are the dock doors. This is how that I have in my building." She's like, "Okay, we got 12. What ones do you want for LTL? What ones do you want for full truckload? Okay, how long of the windows do you want for appointments? All right, what are the PO numbers you want to do?" Within 1 hour, we had the entire database built out. It was seamless. I mean, it was exactly what you'd expect, right? And for somebody that's not tech savvy, for me, I'm like, okay, well, I wonder how this call's going to go. it was such a simple little thing to do. And I mean, and I just talked to my warehouse manager this morning, just said, hey, how's this going for you? Because now we've been in it for a year. He's like, it's heaven. It really is. And I'm not just saying that. Trust me. I come from the carrier side too. So I'm not sugarcoating it. It's just so efficient and it makes everybody's job so much easier. Absolutely.
In terms of things that you wished you'd known about before you implement it, was there anything that had we said to you sooner, you would have said, okay, Nate, I'll jump in right away. Was there anything that you found out after you started using it that you'd wished we'd highlighted earlier?
100%. And that's the reporting piece, right? That I had mentioned earlier that I would have showed today. And it's so easy. What Zach was showing where you schedule appointment on the left, there is, your carrier contacts, your users. It's another one I'll bring up in a second. But actually talk about that now. When you're building it out, I have 6 warehouse workers that I want to have access to it, right? I can set them up as users, right? I'm the owner of the warehouse. That would be my warehouse manager. Whoever's in charge of the warehouse, I want him to be the owner of it. The other guys can get in there. Like I said, if that something ever goes wrong, there's an audit for it. But the customer, instead of calling me and harassing me all the time saying, hey, where's my freight? I give them access as a viewer only, meaning they can go in there and they can see every single appointment that's been taken care of, right? What's going on, where the freight is, without having to reach out and call. Once again, making it easier to work, right?
So that's an elimination of more phone calls and emails where
So
we're trying to save you money,
now
right?
We're only at 1.1 1 million emails instead of 1.2. And the second thing I was touching on first was the reporting. There's a tab in there for insights, right? Carrier insights that will literally show you every single carrier that has come into your facility, how many appointments they made, how many appointments they canceled, how many times they were on time, how many times they were late, how late were they, when did they cancel the appointments. It literally lays out everything. And then it also takes it down to your each dock door where it's, because as Connect is running it through WMS, it's telling you this guy was here for an hour and 27 minutes at that appointment time in door 11. Those are the things that if I knew, and now that I do know them, and every warehouse that I go to and every customer I talk to, I'm basically telling them it's a prerequisite, right? If we're going to open up this warehouse, this is something that we're going to call. I won't get into cost. It's not costly. It is so worth it. I mean, it saves you so much time. So those are the 2 main ones for me. And maybe I see things a little differently because I've been on the carrier side too, but just knowing how it makes things more efficient. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. And as you were talking about users, one of the things I thought about, because, we're definitely focused on how do we help people save money, and we're using benchmarking and metrics. But with those users, I've had a few of our partners say, hey, we want to create a read-only user for our finance team, because what they want to do, today's Thursday afternoon. A lot of times people are taking Friday off to try and get into a long weekend. But if they can see when that appointment was marked as complete, and maybe you have net 60 or net 90 terms, you need to get invoicing going right away. And so again, we're trying to keep cash flow going and get that invoicing out. They can't edit, they can't modify the appointments, but they can see it's completed and start that billing, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm going to check and see if we've had any questions, because I think we're getting close to the Q&A portion here. Let's see. What level of customization is available in terms of scheduling, rules, time slots, etc.? So that's a great question. I will kick that over to Frankie here in a second. Customization is a great word, right? But it's also a word that can get us in trouble. We like to use the word configurable. So it's highly configurable. But custom starts to set expectations that you can make whatever colors and have it do whatever rules and all the other things. We have a ton of parameters in place. So for instance, on the carrier side, the warehouse will actually build out the items that they want the carrier to fill in, such as a bill of lading, number of pallets. Do they require a forklift? What are some of the rules that you've set up for people to build when they're asking the carrier to fill out the information to book the appointment?
And it's completely, I won't say completely, but you can kind of do it how you want. And my experience on the trucking side was frustrating because the majority of the receivers would ask for like 7 or 8 different things. So I'd go in there, like you said, skid count, BOL, PO, pickup number, what is the weight? And then you're going to have to find all these questions. What we've really figured out on our end with the warehouses that we run it is, okay, guys, the freight, we know the freight, what's coming in. What information is key? What information is crucial for us, for everybody in the warehouse to know exactly what's coming in? And we do it to a 1 number. And then that's the number that's relayed to the carrier, so they know when they're coming in or when they're setting their appointment, they're only putting that 1 number. And it's nice, there isn't 7 fields or 8 fields. There's 1 field and it says this is the PO number. And you can even put it in starts with this. So, when you get paperwork, there's all kinds of numbers. If they're setting the appointment, they don't have to go diving. But in terms of how you can basically build it out however you want to. You set the appointment windows for whatever you want. If you only want to take 4 appointments a day on Monday through Thursday in Dock 1, and that's all that you build that out for that hour, that's all that's going to show on there. So you can really kind of do it exactly kind of how you want, for sure.
Yeah, I like to think of some cool elements are, I think of it more from sales first, right? If I leave Friday, do I want a sales rep booking a meeting for me on Monday morning at 7:30? And I'm trying to get into the office by 6:37. But if I walk in blind to a sales call without prepping, I don't think I'm going to do a great job, right? So we established the same rules in Opendock. If your team only works Monday through Friday, we can actually help you block anybody booking that Monday morning until Tuesday. So we create like 24-hour buffers, right, where you can hold off so you don't show up having more trucks than you actually have workers to unload them, right?
Holidays are a big one for that, right? Some warehouses, shippers, receivers will be working, 24/7, 365. Others won't. We go in, when we built that out, we went in and we blocked off, Christmas, Thanksgiving, 4th of July, or whatever other days we knew that we were going to be off. Or, hey, this is going to be a huge inventory day. We know that's going to be coming. We have people coming in for an audit, block it off, no appointments for those days. You can literally make it, specific to what you need.
Yeah, that's fun. And then another thing we like to get excited about is we publish a schedule through Opendock to the carriers, but there's also ways that as a warehouse, you can create a couple hidden doors that aren't available to the carriers. So if you have that audit, if you have the FDA show up, or if you have a couple trucks that collide, or, God forbid, a forklift doesn't quite do its job, you can actually go and budget additional time that the carriers can't schedule against, but you're still trying to maintain that integrity of getting people in and out the door.
And knowing that you're going to have people that are late. I have a lot of warehouses that will build in an hour window at one of the doors or two of the doors throughout the day, that just in case they don't get any notification. Listen, we want to get every driver unloaded and get them out of there, right? That comes from, the carrier side, but you can kind of feed into a couple hours of free time that you're never going to schedule, but you know that if something happens or somebody's late, you have those little pockets you can fill them into and get them out of there. So
excellent. So I have another question that says, can Opendock be integrated into an existing gate and yard management system? So the simple answer is yes, and especially if you're able to work with RedwoodConnect, because they've done a lot of the work in terms of building out integrations. To break down that answer in a little bit more complicated way, we're actually through Opendock in a beta mode right now where we have gate management so that you can allow the drivers to check in. We're not asking the drivers to enter in additional information. We're not asking them to do more work. We're simply asking them to validate that they're here, in fact, for this appointment. And one of the reasons why we're doing that, and I think we've hit on it a couple of times, it's integrity of data, right? If a driver says, yes, that's me, that's my appointment, I'm here for that time, and stamps their name on it, we now have an official arrival time, which should mean we can track everything else from that standpoint. In terms of yard management, yeah, we have multiple customers playing nice with YMS and Opendock and using RedwoodConnect to build out that integration. We do not want to disrupt the ecosystem that you've worked so hard to build. We want to be an enhancement to that, and that's our hope.
That makes sense.
Seeing if we have any other questions. I know we are about 2 minutes away from our time here, so I want to be mindful of everybody's time. I know it's close to lunchtime here in Chicago. Mainly just want to say thank you to our partners at RedwoodConnect. It's really nice to be seen as a great dock scheduling tool that they believe has excellent API and excellent integration ability. And Frankie, you guys have used us both on the Connect platform and also at warehouses that you manage. So it's also a time to say thank you for believing in us and also sharing your testimony.
No, absolutely. And it's truthful, right? I want as simple as I can get. So, and I would even be willing to say, for anybody on there, if they wanted to say, hey, can you share a screen with me and kind of run it through how you would do it, I'd be more than happy to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I think it's a great tool. We need to simplify supply chain. It's just too complex and too many transactions. And this is just such a great tool. And for somebody that's been doing this for 15 years and losing sleep every night over, is this guy going to get empty, or making sure my drivers are all taken care of, it's just so nice to have the ability to use platforms like this. So it's my pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you. And Zach, appreciate the deep dive demo. I'm sure there were plenty of people on here that were really looking to see the nuts and bolts and how things work. So thank you to everyone who joined us on LinkedIn. Our information in terms of how to contact us is there. We'd love to walk you through more steps, but also if you have suggestions, we're open-minded companies who like to continue to evolve. We want to solve problems for 2025 and 2023 if we can. So fire away, and thanks everybody. Have a great day.